Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last of a two-part poetry and open mic series, Poems for Our Living and Breathing. My name is Luisa A. Igloria. I teach in the MFA program at Old Dominion University and at the Muse Writers Center. Since my July 2020 appointment as Poet Laureate of Virginia, I've made it part of my commitment to work with others to create programs and projects to help center the rich diversity of poets and poetry in Virginia. And it's April, which means it's National Poetry Month, which is a great time to be doing something like this. We enjoyed the first part of this series last Sunday with friends from the Poetry Society of Virginia. And today we have part two. Thank you for joining us. Besides this reading, though, I am excited for an ongoing curation through the Slover Library, which is called Poem a Day Virginia. So I would like you to check it out. You can read one new poem from a Virginia poet every day this month. I put the link in the chat. So before we get started, though, I'd like to thank Muse Program Manager Susan Deutsch and Muse Executive Director Michael Candlewall for helping to make this program possible. Also, please check out the Muse Writers Center. It is one of the largest full-service literary centers in the country, offering online and in-person creative writing classes in all genres for all levels and ages. The new Winter-Spring 2021 schedule is now online. Go to the-muse.org and check out all the wonderful classes and workshops. And we are all still doing things virtually because of the pandemic. I also want to let everyone know that the Muse offers tuition assistance for all who need it. We don't turn anyone away. Almost $30,000 in tuition assistance was given out last year because the Muse does not want anything getting in the way of someone who wants to learn to write. Now, for this reading program, I have invited friends and colleagues from the English department at Old Dominion University, who are poets also very familiar to many of us in the Hampton Roads area. And they're here to share work that speaks in some way to the idea of poetry's role in civic engagement, its role in our life on the ground, and in the world at large. And also in the English department, it's like, you probably can imagine poets around the corner. Every corridor has a poet, and we rhyme and do meetings in iambic pentameter. But I'm joking. Anyway, the poems that we are going to hear are going to address more than social justice or race, though there is without a doubt a greater urgency to give language to these important subjects. And I see poems really of civic engagement as a form of deep listening and attention, with the goal of not just writing or reading such poems, but offering them as places where we can return again and again to have these deeper and more intimate conversations about how we live, how to live as beings among others in this sometimes very troubling world. I will just let you know that each reader in turn will call on the next reader, and we will finish with our friend Tim Seibles, past Poet Laureate of Virginia, 2018 to 2019, who will close the main portion of the program, after which we will have a brief open mic. So please look at the poet readers' bios and links on the Muse event page. And with your permission, I'd like to begin with a poem, maybe two poems of my own. And these are fairly new poems. These are poems that I do in my daily writing practice. And the first one is occasioned by really just being very troubled by the increase in violence and attacks against AAPIs in our midst, in our communities nationwide, not just here. So this poem is called They Ask What Came First, the Hate Speech or the Attack. A woman walks to church the Monday after Easter. She's wearing a light sweater because at last it feels like it could truly be spring. But who even goes to church anymore on a weekday morning in New York? The immigrant healthcare workers will tell you, the nannies and short order cooks, the 1 a.m. custodial workers, grandmothers who spent years polishing other people's floors on their knees as if before a God who only cares that every surface reflects his many countenances. See the figure that approaches her from left of camera, spitting words we know by now have the power to wrench visible what's usually invisible. Say scourge and it becomes scourge. Say peril. Say it must go or doesn't belong. See her fall beneath the weight of a boot. Imagine the crack of her pelvis on the pavement, a sound muffled by traffic in its banal passage. Tell me how a woman slight of build could save every last penny in a clean pickle jar to put children through college, then copper her with bruises as sudden flowers erupt on her face. A few feet away, three doormen shut double glass doors that might have pulled her into quick safety. Across the street, someone is screaming. I don't know what words those might have been. I wasn't there. I'm there, though I wasn't there. And for a second short poem, I'd like to offer, because all of us here are from the English department, I wanted to read a poem called Teaching English in a Foreign Country. And in 1901, about 530 American teachers arrived in the Philippines aboard the USS Thomas. They were called or referred to as the Thomasites. And one of those Thomasite teachers wrote, I guess in her journals, this particular sentence, which is used as the epigraph to my poem. And I quote, "Our nation has found herself confronted by a great problem, dealing with a people who neither know nor understand the underlying principles of our civilization, yet who, for our mutual happiness and liberty, must be brought into accord with us through the common schools." And this is Adeline Knapp, who was one of the American school teachers, one of the Thomasites. Teaching English in a foreign country. A name is a bright line you can follow. The tiniest flying creature leads out of a wood, winking. You have no recollection of how you got there, but you trust it completely. Commit its outline to memory. Understand that certain precious things have to be hidden for centuries in order for their shine not to blind unopened eyes. Under the trees in a makeshift schoolroom, a teacher writes letters on a slate. But what is a bat that isn't a body with wings opening like a fan? What is a ceiling that isn't a sky ornamented with unchanging directions? Wind bells a different diction, passing beneath the honeysuckle. Smoke from a wood fire carries the grammar of our prayers from this world to the afterlife. There, even if our names have been changed, the ancestors will know how to call us. Thank you. And now I would like to call our first reader in this main part of the program, linguist, world traveler, poet, Janet Bing.
Thank you. Thank you. Back in the 1960s, many idealistic young people thought that they were going to save the world by joining the Peace Corps. And this, I think that we thought we were going to change the world, but I think the world changed us. This poem is set in Afghanistan, where it is custom for a widow to marry the brother of her late husband, and it's called Afghan Wedding. Frowning before the mullah and the groom, the stubborn young widow refuses to let her dead husband's brother open her fist to show that she obeys. The wedding can't go on. The widow's father, red with rage, grabs her arm and whispers in her ear. Then she gives up, opens her fist. The family honor is saved. Next morning at the hospital, there are no broken bones, but many bruises on the face she covers with a scarf. The next poem describes an incident from a bus trip during Ramadan, the Muslim month of fasting. And it's called You Are Our Guests, Iran, 1964. The snow won't stop. Our bus, full of fasting pilgrims returning from the Hajj, is stuck near the top of a mountain. A man sings from the rear of the bus, a plaintive Persian song, a song of suffering and of sorrow. Some of the men try to push the bus the short 10 feet over the mountain's crest, but by now the snow is too deep and the men are both hungry and cold. We 3 Americans are hungry too. We'd had no time to shop for food. At sunset, the kind Iranians share with us what little food they have. At last, Iranian soldiers come by jeep to check the stranded bus. They take the 3 Americans back to Tehran, to warmth and food, leaving the pilgrims on the bus to fast another day. The soldiers explain this to us. Of course, you are our guests. Our next reader will be Robbie Ciara. Robbie?
Thank you, Janet, and thank you everyone who is joining us here today. I'm very excited to be here. My first poem I'd like to do is entitled A Short Letter to 2020, and it's just full of all of those little anecdotes I think we've all shared during our time in quarantine. So this is a short letter to 2020. Sometimes it's the maddening process of never finding something. Something's always missing. That particular spice in a crowded spice cabinet that is necessary for culinary greatness. But why am I always hungry? No, what I wished for was another night in Ochi or Mobe, a summertime I spent speaking with a Jamaican who told me that ackee and saltfish is best for breakfast and to try jerk pork only once. I can't find the photo anywhere. There is more toilet paper than plantains. My lover keeps watching murder shows. Discovery ID is a terror, and I can speak fluent Chihuahua perfectly. The dog criticizes my stanzas, the agent, the editor. He licks at me with approval, and then my mother calls. Asks for a new show recommendation. She dismisses all but one. Is there a closet I haven't checked? You're always losing things, she says. My Snoopy bobbles its head to the rhythms of Kendrick Lamar while my frustration boils over. I can't find my memories or my socks. Sock gnomes are cruel as well as Amazon. The package has been 10 stops away for 6 hours. More lies. I can't find my mask. I am sure it's parked between my anxiety and my fears. My friends and I one day will share COVID without the benefit of drinking too much. These kids have the right idea. Unplugging is best served after we finished watching When They See Us. Well done, Ava. Nola, the youngest human in this home, has cornered me in her boutique through con and misdirection. The purple eyeshadow clashes with my nails. I'm not going to judge. All the spas are closed, and her mother is watching Wives with Knives season 4. This is the best tea I've had in years. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read is called The Art of Breathing, and it's for George Floyd. This is called The Art of Breathing. I find myself taking deep breaths for George, filling my lungs with rich trees and windsong, and I hold and breathe again with eyes closed. I imagine a world that looks at me with auspicious filter. Does this world know in my dreams, I am crane dancing and sipping kimchi stew? Or is it Ethiopian lentil soup with prophecy Brazilian wine? I never can tell. A plate of chambo comes to mind. What beautiful smells I can breathe in for him. Replace his city pavement and car fume. Gestapo boot, stale cigarette, the sweaty knee. Gentle giants need to run their hands across the Serengeti and plant their big feet in Tanzanian mud. What joy the earth could learn from hearing him. Exhale that large laugh and meek smile. What regrettable deferment. What necessary breaths we must take now. Open eyes now and breathe deeply and exhale a stanza. Taste Masalas dosa. Feel the tickle of Catherine Moss. Let the sun know we will dance to Odie and overcome. Thank you. Next, we have the very talented Elaine Chapman, nonfiction writer and poet.
So thank you so much. Thanks so much, Robbie. And thank you for inviting me to this amazing reading with all these amazing writers. I'm going to be reading from, I have a new book of poems coming out, Reservoir. Its publication date is June 1st. So I'm going to read 2 poems from the book. And these poems were written before the pandemic and before Black Lives Matter marches and before the insurrection. Urgency. Last night, I talked my son through the city, over the Golden Gate, past Sausalito, to San Anselmo, while my husband drove to a hospital and sat with a man who discovered his wife on the bathroom floor, hemorrhage to the brain, passing from one world to another. And this morning, I watered the plants while he drove back to anoint her with oil and pray. No children, only a nephew and a 90-year-old uncle. It was a restless night. No one understands my urgency. A few hours ago, I watched 2 herons circle high overhead. We must love fiercely. We must say, open your eyes, look at me. It is midsummer and the heat oppressive. Some days it is hard to breathe. Last night I woke in a sweat, even my hair wet. Too many days have passed since I looked my loved ones in the eyes. I hear their voices. I render myself helpless. And my husband's daughter, still estranged. No plan for reconciliation. The woman's ventilator removed an hour ago. She is breathing on her own. Her dying may take several days, and we prepare for yet another funeral. We say, I love you. We say, we will be together soon. Then I decided to read the last poem in the book. Early May, mid-morning. To write a poem is to say I am living again, opening the door to the known, unknowing, welcome and hospitality. The baby birds in the basket on the porch disappeared. We want to believe they flew away and live in the boxwood close by. We stop and listen. Wait. I stop mid-sentence, light the incense, beside myself with longing, like the honeysuckle consuming the backyard, like the prayer flags fallen to the ground, unrequited love. When it rains, a natural spring runs along the tree line to the reservoir. We cannot stop it, nor do we want to change the descending path. We welcome shifting ground, erosion. It suits us. The subtle sand mixed with scattered leaves and soil. So thank you so much for listening. And our next reader is the amazing award-winning poet, Ben Kingsley. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben. I will try and live up to amazing, award-winning. I will definitely not, though. This is a poem. It's a one poem, 2 pages. It's about being together in an odd context. I really miss being together, and I think that's very relatable. The context is a heavy metal concert. If you think of the emo or goth kind of movements, you need to know that Hot Topic is a place where you can go to buy lots of black clothing, eyeliner, etc. And maybe you'll want to know that the title is Into the Red Devil's Horn, and sometimes at these concerts, they will wrap up the microphone in a kind of red duct tape and it looks like a red devil's horn. So this poem is called Into the Red Devil's Horn. Of a duct tape wrapped microphone, the lead singer unbuckles his diaphragmic roar. All you Hot Topic tourists need to shove the fuck out. Anticipation fishhooks are assholes. The drummer windmilling both sticks. She puts her whole soul into the double bass pedal and stutter test. The jaw of the dance floor unclenches. Soapstone griddle of ceilings drip and rattle. Our knee after knee bent back in longing for the 2-step snap and moan louder than our father's whip. Sound is a torrent. Water over umbrella blossomed faces. We puncture seams in the canvas of each other's torsoed clap and spilling. Horizontal across this venue's meridian, faster than a bird feeder cage, a swirl, storm caught. We spin kick, we thrash, we do a move called eating the dead, while flat brim hats shouting BRUTAL, brutal, on their underbellies litter our banging heads thwack and wear a grin around every riff, firing brighter than the day our Lemoyne Dairy Queen burned up. We are long-boned and steel rakes upended, 2-stepping over every tortured hour, shredding the saran wrap around our mind's buffet of waking remainders. We mosh it all out, becoming mountains of upside down pelvic girdles. Collective, we are in excess of thrown elbows and the tattoos that tourniquet our forearms. Fists outstretched as if in want for a blessing from the ram skull anthem. We call it deathcore, grindcore. We thirst for the rot of sampled screams and soft mouths spearing hard realities. We think we are the ballad of the loner. In this song, we are tapping the untapped. With the last cymbals crash, we think we will finally vocalize desire, the howl of microphone held too close to speaker, reverb, finding its way toward a measure of rest. And up next is the fresh-faced, full Professor Drew Lopenzina, fully tenured as of last week, and it will now be impossible to get rid of him. So please give him your full attention for the next hour and 10 minutes.
Thank you for that exciting introduction, Ben, and also for the exciting poem as well. It's really good to see everybody, and I am happy. I was really just pleased to be invited to be a part of this. Thank you, Luisa, for including me in this wonderful event. And so my job doesn't give me a lot of time to write poems anymore, and it's something that it used to be an important part of my life, but I took this moment as an invitation to, like, maybe I should write another poem. And so this is brand new, work in progress, of course, but I call this The Sky at Standing Rock. The sky gets crowded out by things: shoulders of hills, the crowns of trees, rows of suburban townhouses, and the thin, fine edge where the world itself drops off beyond green summer lawns into the pale space between. So much so that much of its choreography passes unseen. Moon and stars plot their inexhaustible dance, appear for the briefest moment in an aperture of night, only to vanish backstage again, where the machinery of cosmos endlessly rolls back its set designs, hitches up its nylons, and steals a quick smoke beyond the glow of the house lights, before prancing out once more to dance spectacular on that stage. I once camped a week on the Missouri River, where on that open sea of grasses the night sky unfolded itself, one crease at a time, like a giant glittering map on a table. Here the moon would rise, and come a certain hour, the sun come chasing behind, tracing an arc across the dome of sky that over days moved like a wave, rolling, roiling, sliding toward some unseen shore, casting up the celestial dance step of stars, which resolved themselves in patterns, a breathless waltz of stories and songs, pulsing to a drumbeat that until then, at least, had barely been intimated, had remained, in fact, remote or simply left untold. In the late afternoon, I ascend one of those rolling, sun-drenched hills, unspooling through this plain, and mark how much of our earthly dance is also danced beyond the pale of the horizon, lives enthralled to the invisible pull of laws, designs, orbits, systems that we cannot see, but draw all the same upon the magnets of our souls, compelling these parts to come together here in this way. To one side, the river yields its reeded banks to the encampments of water protectors, stretching out in a storybook motley of tents, flags, teepees, and yurts, the rarest of armies, having marshaled its forces intent on peace. And when I look to the other side, armored cars and armed sentries, water cannons, dogs, and canisters of pepper spray, bulldozers, backhoes, drills, and cranes, they too gleam in the afternoon sun, barring the road while their turbines burrow and hum, a black snake winding beneath earth and river, all this poised to erupt at once in seething fury, having been summoned here by a century's worth of circling stars from the seeming repose of that eternal backstage. Okay, I have one more. So this is called Amelia Brewer. And I have no idea who Amelia Brewer is or was, but I read in my hometown newspaper once that she was involved in the first act of civil disobedience ever to take place in Berkshire County, where I grew up. And so I wrote this poem about her. Okay. I came across your name in a newspaper article. Back in 1904, it read, "Yours was the first act of civil disobedience our small county had ever posted." I wonder, were you at the stove that day, just laying in a pan of bread, or standing by a sink filled with dishes, smoothing the damp folds of your apron with thin, wrinkled hands, when through the small, sun-dappled window you spied their progress on the roadway ahead? Or perhaps you were out in the yard, wringing the necks of chickens, blood spattered there on your cornflower dress, wiping a loose strand of hair from your eyes when you marked them in their uninvited advance, the unsolicited call of progress. It was the New England Telephone Company, and all the company's men come with picks and shovels to your yard to dig a hole without asking, while the horses waited with their cargo of cable and stripped naked poles, and you, with your 100 chores, with bread in the oven and chickens loose in the yard, and children, no doubt, and a household to run, still you stopped what you were doing, wiped your hands, still worn from dragging water from the well, and marched over to those company men, lay down in the hole they had dug, and just like that, arrested their momentum, so that no more poles were stood that day, and the giant wooden spools of cable lay waiting, and they dared not forcefully wrest you out, for you had that manner about you, for you, like you would brook no interference from men. You made no bones about it. This was your property, and progress would simply have to march around it. And not Jesus, nor Geronimo, nor Alexander Graham Bell himself could persuade you to move. And all this to say, Amelia Brewer, that if I could, I would lie down there with you in that small dirt hole in 1904, turn off my cell phone and my iPad, and perhaps we'd sing Union songs or some others. And I wouldn't mind one whit if my shoes were muddied or my pants were torn, for it'd be worth it just to see how with the entire 20th century chomping at the bit, one tired woman took time in her hands and turned progress from her door. Thank you. And I'd like to pass the torch, as it were, over to my good friend and colleague and student sometimes, Kole Matheson.
Thanks so much, Drew. And again, thanks, Luisa, for having me. So a lot of 2018 I spent doing legal and genealogical research, and discovered that my fourth great grandmother, Sarah Rosaline Hicks, walked the Trail of Tears as a child. So I've also been taking some Cherokee language classes. So this kind of mixes together some of the legal research and language learning. It's called Ojali Heliga, which means we are grateful. Osta chalagi, Ojali Heliga, buckbrush, honey, basket, suckle. Baby born grandmother reveals her name, Sarah. Ceremony, 7 ancestors long, stories, songs. Shell shake dances, strawberry memory. Bean bread, squash blossom, hominy. Seeds upon the trail from Appalachia immemorial to the setting sun, thunder, lightning, horizon. Indian territory there, another new moon, council fire light. Osta chalagi, Ojali Heliga. All right, so the second one that I'll share with you all, I thought it was a better use of my time to actually share a poem that I helped to curate If you don't already know, I'm the music director for Humanities Behind Bars, and we recently published a zine of student writing. The zine is called Contraband Love, and I'd like to read one of the songs that I actually curated, which is published here in poetry form. You can find our songs at soundcloud.com/humanitiesbehindbars. This song is called Abolition Song and features the writing of Lo. Abolition Song. Why be silenced, locked behind iron, or discover triumph without triumph? We are labeled that everyone is violent, but this isn't true. Statistics are lying. If there wasn't a jail to put a brother in, there wouldn't be money to fund another pin or a common web to give a court conviction. We need more treatments and support system, stimulus bills to pave the way to access with NA courses and AA classes to show initiative. Boy, it takes practice to enjoy every nation, especially Blackness. You could love self, but that would be selfish. The Lord loves us all and showed us to be selfless. So you can show love and gain what respect is, or you can help no one and continue to be helpless. Thanks again for having me. It's my privilege and honor to introduce poet Kole Morse.
Thanks, Kole. I've been recently, the past couple of years, working on a series of sonnets about children's book characters. I have 2 small kids, so I'm reading thousands of books. And I started noticing discrepancies in characters, depending on how they were portrayed. So I started doing research on it. And for instance, last year's children's books, the amount that featured Central Asian or Asian American characters accounted for only 8.7% of total children's books published in the USA. Books with Pacific Islander characters as central characters accounted for only 0.05 of what was published. Obviously, representation matters, and not only when these books are published, oftentimes I see that they're often very stereotypical, and there's only a few storylines that minority or non-white characters are allowed to have, and some are great. But so this poem attempts to observe both the stereotypes I see in these books and to push against those stereotypes. To the North and Southeast Asian girls in children's books. Teachers designate your mouth a moist darkness into which they throw seeds. Eventually a vine slips out, ties you to the classroom light. Fleshy blossoms wick from shoots. Your tongue becomes a fine netted green. Soon shiny pods grow and other children come to eat them. In these books, your grandmother's hands flower into dumplings. Tigers and dragons dance on a red field. Little girl gets a ladder, cuts herself free from white walls, and loops her tendrils like a scarf. There must be more than school and celebration, these eaters in the streets who speculate epiphyte. They want to classify her with their hands. Little girl swathes her skin viridian, slips on loose-fitting clothes, tucks dirt and roots into pockets, drapes pods into her hair where from a distance they're mistaken for spangles. She strolls, holdfasts round her neck, singing updates of wreathed body. She walks right off those pages of Ivy Leagues and sorrow, says, no, I do not effortlessly live on air. If you want to have what I make, now you must ask. Feel what it is to have your flesh reach across my face. And then one more poem. This past year, I was trying to think about how to describe the pandemic or my feelings, and I often felt like it was snowing indoors. Like I would wake up some days and I would feel this invisible heaviness on my chest in the bed, and I would feel like it was snow, as if it had snowed overnight on me. So, but at the same time, there was so much to love about this world, and there still is. So I wanted to focus on that in this poem. What we dream the world to be right now in our rooms and houses, and then what it actually is. This is also for all the weddings and trips and relationships, everything that's been put off. The world, it gathers us. Let us start with a girl who loves road trips with her mother. Let us start with a boy who loves the mystery of departure. Let us start and start again. Let us gather. There is the idea of Scotland, and then there are the midges and ticks. And yet Scotland is still there, gleaming. There is a part of your beloved you have touched so often, your fingerprint is always upon it. Jut of collarbone, dimple accompanying the spine's line, where the hand rests, even in absentia. Let us gather, even if it means sitting in screen shine, as all year we listen to the sound of ice as it granted safe passage via the hatchet's mouth. There is the snow-becalmed lake, and then there is the black beneath. Both are real. We must love this world, even though we will lose it. Must love knowing the last seed lies curled. Cracks sleep within the china, a tendon flares inside a run. Even then, let us start again. Let us gather Agatha's blue plates, their scattering of light encircling each meal like a blessing. Gather the trail tipped with cattails aflame in autumn's expansive rooms. Leaf-flaked corridor lending its season of progress, of speed. Gather the sledge ropes burn. There is the cabin, and then there is its construction. Don't you love it, that field? Those two people ringed with flowers, grown by hands practiced at making things bloom. Grasshoppers, small heralds of each step as we start again, as these two step forward. We are gathered here. The world, it gathers us. So next us is Renée Olander, and she is the author of American Dangerous, which is a great book. And I think she's going to be coming to us by phone, if not by video.
Thank you so much, and
there
good
she is.
evening. I apologize. Yes, I was on the phone, but it looks like perhaps I'm back online. Thank you so much to Luisa Igloria and to everyone here. And I'm going to share two poems. The first, frankly, was triggered by some things over the last couple of months. I was on a panel at the Ziders American Dream Theater to screen a play centered on the voices of formerly sex-trafficked individuals. And I have learned since then from some local folks at the Samaritan House who work with these individuals locally. So this poem is hot off the press. It's called Trigger Alert, Patriarchal Privilege Primer for Sex Trafficking Survivors. At the regular outreach task force meeting last week, the shelter director reported on 8 survivors this month, including a grubby local child who'd shivered delirium tremens in her waiting room blanket, said she was okay. Her intake exam found 5 STDs in her throat, rotten teeth. Girl, run from something. Run, Jane, run. Trigger alert and TMI. Too much information about local sex trafficking minors, the global sex trafficking industry sickens, stupefies like pimps' drugs. The booming biz sex trafficking is, market-driven economic engine, revolving hotel motel doors, supply chain pervasive as porn, pole dancing primetime, streaming live. The slippery slope of adult entertainment, dotted lines to the average dicks. The males who scream while they strum their guitars. Their playboy gazes scalding and searing the selves of others, others whose selves they can't imagine, don't care to imagine. Their phallic privilege so swollen it suffocates, spreads infection, the pandemic of patriarchal privilege and predation. They can't imagine you, shivering child, and the dotted lines. They can't imagine their consumption was your hide, their pleasure, your expense. But girl, you are out, praise be. May you go, girl. May you get equine therapy, bathe in restorative waters, shed the crackling pain, abasement, unearned shame, drink and eat to nourish and heal cell by cell. Settle your breath, inhale aromas of your choice, and slowly, safely, in good time and space, unfurl your voice, your singular self and song. The second poem I'll share is an older poem. It's actually in my 2018 collection, American Dangerous, which I hope you'll all snap up if you haven't already. And I decided to read this one, first of all, in honor of my friend Janet Bing, because she told me she liked it. And I was especially triggered because of this morning's front page of the pilot and the homeless encampment a few blocks down the street from me here. So this is a villanelle that was very much, it's centered in my neighborhood and current times. If I can just find it here, I had it marked. It's called Llewellyn Avenue Redevelopment. The lame parade along Llewellyn Avenue, a stiff limper, an old dude or gentleman, a woman whose foot spills out of her shoe, a hag whose ankle sags over her shoe, and collections of bundles carried by men made lame but parading Llewellyn Avenue. Traipsing or dragging down Llewellyn Avenue, these huddled masses bring no sense of zen to homeowners with housekeepers and good shoes who use their money and power to choose to get rid of park benches homeless men sat on to make the park a refuge. Tree-lined, flood-prone Llewellyn Avenue, once in decline, known for drug busts and dens, gentrified, and now sports high-end shoes. Norfolk removing park benches was news. No rest for the shiftless downtrodden. Rush hour blows fast down Llewellyn Avenue. The trudging lame could use some new shoes. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce the rock star award-winning Alison Reed.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be with y'all today. And thank you, Kole, for reading from the Humanities Behind Bars, Seeing Contraband Love. It's super rad. So I want to think briefly about what poetry and public engagement can stand in the place of, and what can stand in the place or the way of both. My first poem was inspired by a lecture at an academic conference in New York City. I remember traveling to the city with some friends a few years back, but one friend, Mary, who came with us, couldn't gain admittance to the talk because she wasn't registered for the conference. So with that exclusion in mind, I recount Butler's elaboration of an etymology of the word capitalis, which is the title of the poem, while seeking in the second section to expand on the limitations of institutions for grappling with the messiness and the beauty of social movements and relationships. The poem, Capitalis, begins with an epigraph by Judith Butler, who gave the keynote. So, what implications does the thesis of emotional ambivalence and love have for thinking about alternatives to the death penalty and for legal violence more generally? 1. Capitals as in counting heads, cattle and chattel, as in heads of state severing heads from bodies, as in cultural accounting, whose eyes roll off faces and whose faces have no place in the polity except for their labor keeps everything running. Capital as in punishment or unpaid labor for capital offenses. Accruing debts by design unpayable. Not hypocrisy, but ambivalence makes us guilty. Festive pleasure in executing eroticized aggressive drives inflict categorical cruelty. Ineradicable violence between the prison as a model of social debt and the penalty of death. 2. Capitals as in stuck cities that Exodus in consonants recounted. Capitals as in abiding languages formalities. If I capitalize each letter of your name, it signifies screaming, or I wish our torsos together, file folders forming wide O's in laughter, so sweaty our sentences lean lowercase. If our speech acts trick us enough, we might decide why not bid double-blind nil. To uncapitalize opacity, to splay books, to hand out hearts on cards while pressing spades to chess our open deck. Muscular organs, open fists to lead sharp blue strings from paper-thin skin to an incalculable euphoria. This our vital air. All right, and my next poem is titled Matter. 1. We sit sipping beer one Monday when Kerry is announced on TV as the first Secretary of State, followed by President Obama, to visit Hiroshima and not apologize. We realize our grandfathers survived because history made history hurt, and the US will spend over $1 trillion to effect mass death with more precision. After split uranium atoms, Manhattan Project secrets sealed Japan's steadfast refusal undone by a new and most cruel bomb, while Japanese Americans meted out linked fates in concentration camps. Your grandfather Szymborski awaited assured mutual destruction of invasion, just as my grandfather Watt, a lieutenant in the British Army, prisoner of war for 3.5 years, would have died without unspeakable erasure devastating. 2. In a dream, I bought the fancy straws we used to sip out of, the reusable ones, while you were waiting outside, overpriced pistachio cakes and a rifle. The attendant taught me to shoot by piercing holes through beans in a can. The holes look like a map of our country, its hungers, its particular revenge against itself. We show up late, belligerent, children of nothing yet owning it all, inept with our instruments but expecting to play. We carry their survival with the nuclear energy of an assurance arsenal that no one is accountable to the circumvented sovereignty of topographies of disaster. Relentless, repetitive calculus of some lives mattering over others, on whose beds we lie for imagination at the expense of whose stolen breath, according to textbook omissions we score to make America. What nation, what flag we wear like bumper stickers on jalopies we didn't buy. They peel, we sweat human size. All right, and now I would like to introduce Noah Renn.
Thank you, Allison, and thanks everybody. It's incredible to be here, reading with you all, and you've offered up so much beautiful work. I have 2 poems here that hopefully aid us in our living and our breathing. First poem is called Magistra, and it opens with a line from the Aeneid. Magistra, immortal one, bring all in memory to the singer's mind. I'm sorry, Mrs. Moda, it's been 20 years and I'm still on book 1 of the Aeneid. Every time I try, Virgil says, this poem is about a man at war. Then I have to stop reading. I mostly remember the endings of the first conjugation recited to the tune of Mickey Mouse. OSTMUSTISNT. When you taught us this, you said, you will remember this for the rest of your life. I'm sorry that I didn't stop Thad when he threw that desk at you, and that I may have been one of the ones Moda. I remember how you said you used to travel Europe translating for the UN, and the pain in your face as you shared that bit of your life with us told us your past chapters were more epic than your current. I'm sorry that I tried to use the cognate pulchritudinous, its root pulchris or beautiful, to flirt with a girl in class. I remember how terrible and obvious that was, but in college I tried it again and ended up marrying her. I'm sorry for the stress I caused you for 4 years, so much so when I see you in the grocery, dark and worn from teaching kids like me who unfailingly of having the courage to try. Remember me, but, and then share my life story, all the wars I've soldiered, how I met my wife, get to tell you how I've become a teacher, in part because of you. And we'd stand there by the olive oil, remembering together our collective history. Magistra, I'm sorry I never got through Latin 3. That senior year, I had to be in there with a freshman who'd entered ahead. And that even though I cheated off Sully every test, I still couldn't pass and I couldn't graduate. I'm sorry I failed and you had to tell me. And I remember at that moment, you felt sad I wouldn't walk. And you were trying to tell me I should feel sad too, but I wasn't brave enough to care. Magistra, I remember. Mi panitat, I'm sorry. And Iagre Pharaoh, hard to bear. I'm sorry I doodled in the textbook, which was not mine, was not yours either, you said. And then you wrote the referral. In his office, Principal Spencer asked me what the hell I was drawing in there. Crowns and swords? Why are you drawing crowns and swords? Are you supposed to be a king? King of what? What story are you in? And I have another one for you. It's called Oyster. It's good to know you were once two halves, and your conception in the water column is both accidental and miraculous. All of your determinism seems random, so for now, just obtain a suitable location, anywhere but on the back of another oyster. You're still soft, so harden. In fact, get ugly. Filter the shit, the poison, the toxicity of your environment. When the temperature rises, adapt. Adopt the flavor of the river that birthed you. Learn to taste like memory. When you're fully developed, you may joyously consumed. If not, you may just grow so damn big, no beast will crack you. So the kelp and the carcass's descent come with it. And there is this one rule we must follow. Hold fast. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce the educator, the poet, the magnanimous man around town, Tom Yuill.
Thank you, Noah. I appreciate that, brother. Unmute myself. It's one of those trippy things when every time you follow, I have given several readings and got to follow Noah, and whatever I was gonna say, can y'all hear? Can you? Seems less interesting about halfway through Noah's bit. The idea of the civic role of the poet. We have this beautiful. It's my favorite thing in the love and poetry are the two things I think are worth living for from all forms of love, or lots of them. And it's a highly idiosyncratic individual art. The American poet in particular, amidst this wash of commercial commoditized arts, can sometimes feel a little alienated. But when you have these anxieties of kind of loss of cohesion, cultural cohesion on the one side, lone gun nuts, or some terrorists, or heaven, or somebody unhealthy level of loneliness or disenfranchised, and on the other side a kind of loss of differentiation, healthy differentiation, which Amazon is accomplishing, which Walmart was the guilty of, when I was a kid, that irritated everybody. The poet is a veteran of that, especially the American poet is a veteran of that anxiety. And so I think it's a great, healthy art. I'm glad that poetry is not commodified in a commercial medium. I'm glad of that it's because I know that the poems are in fact popular. So somebody said, well, isn't it too bad they aren't popular? And all I could say was, well, with respect, yes, they are. This is a poem within a poem. Telemachus is talking to Athena and doesn't know who she is. It's one of my favorite. My reading of the classics is sporadic, undisciplined, and loving. And he doesn't know. This is my favorite belief of the ancient Greeks, that anyone you are talking to, whether they're some sort of grand looking person, or in particular if there's somebody who seems disenfranchised, might be a god. They might be testing you, or they might be there to help you. And in this sort of coming out of this pandemic, I think there's just irrational feelings of anxiety and troubled attempts at recovering socialization everywhere. They're sort of throbbing and thrumming all over the place. Stranger, at this point, I just try not to fear the bewildering night, or the slothful afternoons, hollow in the hollow light. The shade in my mind is thick as a stone wall. The shade in my mind is thick with medicinal smell. Yesterday, head in my hands, I thought my venerable father was standing nearby. I hold him in my heart the way the lion's head holds the iron ring on the door of the venerable building. He said he is always with me, and I believed him. But today, still, nothing is the same. And today, still, it seems my fault. This country's been at war so long, I've had students, the vast majority of my career, teaching career, we've been at war, and various students of mine have been veterans of one stripe or another, and never has one been able to tell me, and they've come to me a lot with, PTSD or whatever kind of thing. And I give them poetry and try and talk to them and tell them, whatever. There are people who are professionals at this. I'm your English professor. I can offer love and poetry. That's all I can do. But I can give you these contacts, and they all say the same thing. What is success supposed to have looked like? And I believe this is a kind of the psychic or psychological debt of this is enormous. And this poem is called Inner Life during wartime. The footprints that lead here are damp, blood red. Deceiving ourselves for a few nights was joyous. Then the door opened and in stormed Menelaus. I sat stunned and watched my dreams drift ahead. Deceiving ourselves for that one night was joyous. Are we fit for our time or born sort of dead? I sat stunned and watched my dreams stagger ahead. We value equalities, we don't value trust. Are we fit for our time or born walking dead? A local guy grinned, said he caught his boss drunk. We value our theories, we don't value trust. The soldier who lost his leg guffawed as he beat me at chess. Some local guy helped when he caught his boss drunk. God sees to all, I don't envy that task. The soldier who lost his leg guffawed as he beat me at chess. What we will become, I cannot think. God will see to all. I don't envy him that task. What a joy it would have been had it been comprehended. What people will become, I cannot think. What we are, I know. Our rhetoric's a mask. What a joy it would have been had it all been comprehended. I hate them all, his father said, but can't say why this war lasts. What we are, we know. Our rhetoric's a mask. See the here and now, that the moment's apprehended. I hate them all, his mother said, but can't say why the war lasts. The footprints that lead here are damp and red. See the here and now, and the moment is apprehended, but we just opened the door, and in stormed Menelaus. The last poem I'll read. Little rock and roller. This is a poem inspired by a painting by Eric Fischl, and the painting is called Swimming Lovers, and the poem is called Song. They're not death by water, but life, feisty currents nibbling each other, radiant shimmying blues and dandelionish pulse. They float for a century, and there you have Genesis. There you have the moon laying all the stars like eggs. There you have legs and breasts and births and the shimmy shimmy of family history wiggling under the surface. There you have coral moving weird and slow like the moment. Not death, but lives, feisty and nibbling each other, a radiating hop. And there you have it, dandelionish light, playing among the currents as they yip at one another. Hear the treble and slap like piano keys tapped fast and hard, like Wolosoff playing full throttle. And there you have life in its genesis, blue shimmering, rhythms grinding and swimming together. It's funky, that leafy blue, which hops and dances, settled and swirling. The moon must have laid all those stars like eggs. How else you gonna explain it? The next poet is my beloved brother in the arts, the former Virginia Poet Laureate, the beautiful Tim Seibles.
Thanks, Tom. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks. Real honor to be here among so many poets. It's amazing because this is a relatively, this is just a little part of Norfolk's, population. And we got all these poets doing all this stuff, some of whom never let you know that they're writing poems, like Drew Lopenzina. And I didn't know Kole Matheson was writing poems either. A lot of you guys are holding out on us. But it's a real pleasure to hear people, and it's always exciting to be connected to Luisa Igloria in any way, and all my other brothers and sisters out here. I'm going to start with a poem. I wrote my nephew just finished about not quite 9 years in prison, and I wrote this poem thinking about him and some of the things he said. It's in a series of poems in which the poem itself is a character. And the title goes right into the body of the poem. It had been a long time since the poem had seen a sunset. Trees, tall buildings, black against the burnt orange sky. The breeze, soft, like a sigh for a friend long dead. Nothing to do now but try to stay clean and think. The poem never tells anyone it has been incarcerated, which sounds like a way to cook meat. Afraid, always, kind of. Impossible not to remember certain faces, the hard quiet of men. Even out here, this light, the feeling of being trapped, as if a country could itself be a cage. Something invisible, an idea, a germ, something had worked on everybody. Night now. The poem looks back at the city, sees the moon not up, two headlights shivving the dark. This poem is called Something Like We Did. It has an epigraph. Some of you know who Sun Ra was, and he had a tune in which the phrase "space is the place" was repeated many times. And if you've never seen Sun Ra perform, excuse me, you have to go on YouTube and just put in Sun Ra and just start watching. All right. Something like we did. Space is the place. You could tell they were surprised that we still tried to build cities, the way you and I might be amazed that birds can build nests without hands. They saw how we lived. Sorry. They saw how we lived and made a sound like rain sifting a river. For a lot of us, knowing we were not alone brought relief from the headache that had lasted all our lives. Of course, some people were scared. The religious held on to their books, claiming this was all make-believe, even when it was undeniable. The 61 ships, stacking light in the clouds, emerald green at dawn, lavender in late afternoon. The engines so quiet. It was like the sky was breathing. They walked something like we did, but the right foot stepped twice for each step of the left. So it appeared they were either testing the ground or considering a dance. Their skin was dark, but transparent. Their hearts like ours, but visible. And when the military began to mobilize, all the big weapons turned into barrels of wine. And whatever we tried with knives or guns, we somehow ended up doing to ourselves until it seemed insane, even to us. Each time one of them spoke, it was like a piano if Cecil Taylor were playing. Voices bending the air the way chimney swifts swoop, half turn, sling back. But after a while, when they watched us, their lips shimmered, and something long ago closed their eyes, as if we were a memory of who they once had been. And they'd come to Earth to prove their existence and mark the promise of another world, someplace we might actually go if we could see inside ourselves and trace what was there. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so
Pleasure
much.
for all of us.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for those poems full of pianos and shimmer and promise. So I feel so fortunate to work with these friends, these poets who've shared their powerful and urgent poems insisting on what matters. Thank you again. But don't go away yet. We have open mic poets who are joining us this afternoon. I believe we have 3 of them: Sierra Selleck, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, and Skip Keith and Will Wilson. Sierra, would you like to come up first?
Hi, I'm Sierra Selleck. Thank you for letting me be here. Can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. I've been writing for most of my life. I'm originally from Alabama, and I wrote this to try to kind of make sense of my relationship with that. I wrote it a few weeks ago. This is called Motherland. Sweet Jesus, mighty mama hurricane, you were the roots of Appalachia before it had a name. You were painted of red clay and yellow hammer. You were thunder and iron and unrequited charm. Legs crossed at the ankle, napkin in my lap. Sit up straight and smile. Biscuits and gravy get in my belly. Humidity and theology, you smother me. You have loved me, but you have left me behind. Your shadow is a monolith, and I am too full of light. And it is possible to love something from a safe distance. You can bless my heart all day, but these sins ain't going away. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. Skip?
Yes. All right. Amongst all the academics, and since it's poetry month, I thought I'd go out a little bit. I tried to write a villanelle, so that's what I got here. And Hayden Carruth wrote a poem, and in his poem, one of the lines was, "Here I am writing my first villanelle at 71. I'm 72, and this is my first." So there is weather great and small on mountains and at sea, and we live and die beneath it all. Clouds so dark, wind so strong, our lives whip hard or in the lee. There is weather great and small. And like or hate, no weather's wrong that grows the crops or fells the trees. And we live and die beneath it all. Some weather's short and some weather's long, but not one does it care to please. There is weather great and small. Men move to weather that they long, or accept it as it wants to be. And we live and die beneath it all. All that man builds and deems as strong turns to flotsam and debris. There is weather great and small, and we live and die beneath it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Skip. And Will, you are our next open mic reader, or our last open mic reader. Are you here? Will Wilson? Is Will here? I'm not sure if he's in the room, but in any case, before we close out, I just want to thank everyone again for sharing this Sunday evening, a little part of your Sunday evening with us. Thank you to all the poets. I think one of you, was it Elaine? A line from one of your poems this evening went something like, to write a poem is to say we are living again. So then to read a poem and share it with others is to live many lives. So we are so lucky tonight. Thank you so much. And thank you again to the Muse. Have a great week ahead, folks. Thank you.